Folks, sometimes one injustice can reveal an even greater injustice. I say that to say that Supreme Court Associate Justice Clarence Thomas should not be on the Supreme Court. And if you will grant that he belongs there, he should not be allowed to rule in cases that deal with black people in any way, shape, manner, or form. I say that because Mr. Thomas hates the fact that he is black. He hates the fact that people in his early adult years, seeing that he was black, made various assumptions about his educational qualifications. But instead of pushing back and making a case for himself as far as his own qualifications were concerned, and recognizing the racist or racial attitudes that the various law firms that he attempted to gain employment with had issues, he turned around and took the reverse tact and became of the opinion that being black was a detriment, that there was something wrong with it. And in doing so, I believe came to the mindset that he really didn't want to be black. He did not want to be considered black. He wanted to have pretty much nothing to do with black people in any type of a positive manner. He could not see the good qualities within the African American community. He basically was or became a self-hating black person. Now, I say all that because of the various court decisions that he has come up with throughout his career. And I will tell you, anytime there is anything to do with a black person or a black issue, he has always ruled or issued a vote opposing that position. Okay? Now, this particular story has to do with James Buck, who was an convicted murderer out of the state of Texas. I'm going to play the clip and then I'm going to interject commentary as it goes along. But really quickly, the Supreme Court issued a 6-2 ruling that the testimony that was ascertained from one of his own defense witnesses was unconstitutional and illegal, and further that his attorney knew that the testimony was going to be given, which was going to have a detrimental effect on whether he was given life without parole or the death penalty, and the attorney did so anyway. 6 Supreme Court justices saw this, and it was clear to them that the conduct was unconstitutional and voted to give this man a new penalty phase trial. 2 justices, Samuel Alito, who is far right, and Clarence Thomas, who is as right as it gets. He's probably the most conservative justice in the last 80 plus years. He couldn't see the racial aspect of the statements made. So anyway, let me play the clip and then you can see what I'm talking about.
Convicted killer Dwayne Buck of Texas gets another chance to fight for his life after the Supreme Court agreed he was sentenced to death because of racial bias. Dwayne Buck was sentenced to die for the 1995 shooting deaths of his ex-girlfriend and her friend in Houston. He also shot his sister, but she survived. Buck's appeal centers on the statements from his own psychologist testifying in his defense. The expert testified that Buck was more likely to be dangerous in the future because he was black. I want y'all to hear that again. The psychologist testified in his defense that the expert was that Buck was more likely to be dangerous in the future because he was black. Well, yet.
Okay. If you have an opportunity, you need to research a CNN show with Don Lemon where he had Harry Hulk, H-O-U-C-K, I believe is the spelling of his last name. And he had another gentleman, and he's always on the show. I can't recall his name. I'm going to try to think of his name before the end of this video. Mr. Hulk, who is a white, I guess, former police commissioner, captain, whatever, made the statement that black people are more, not even more, black people are prevalent to committing criminal acts, period. And I apologize again, but the person pushed back against him and said that, and gave him an opportunity to back away from that statement, and the guy absolutely wouldn't. I'm going to give you the name of the black gentleman who pushed back against him, but that is the mindset of a lot of these quote-unquote law officers that are out there quote-unquote doing their job, and attorneys, prosecutors, and judges. And it looks like in this particular case, even defense attorneys are utilizing this attitude, which is absolutely incorrect and wrong.
Yesterday, the Supreme Court ruled 6-2 that Buck was denied effective counsel when they introduced the racially charged testimony during his trial and later failed to challenge it on appeal. The ruling gives Buck another chance to argue he should not get the death penalty. Chief Justice John Roberts wrote the majority opinion. It reads, quote, "When a jury hears expert testimony that expressly makes a defendant's race directly pertinent on the question of life or death, the impact of that evidence cannot be measured simply by how much airtime it received at trial or how many pages it occupies in the record. Some toxins can be deadly in small doses." Again, the vote was 6-2, and the two justices who did not vote for Dwayne Buck, Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito. In their dissenting opinions, they say there was plenty of evidence to justify the death sentence, including the heinousness of the crime and what they consider Buck's complete lack of remorse. Joining me via FaceTime in New York City, Christina Swarns. She is Dwayne Buck's counsel of record and litigation director for the NAACP's Legal Defense Fund. Also on FaceTime in Houston is Jelana Jones, an attorney there in Houston, Texas as well. Joining me in our studios in D.C., Ralph Chittum's the principal at Black Elephant Consultants, LLC, Paris Jannard, GOP communication strategist, and Amber J. Phillips, co-director of Black. Christina, I want to start with you.
All right, before they get started, the person that I was referring to in that CNN clip with Don Lemon, Harry Hulk, was Mark Lamont Hill. If I can get a chance, I'm going to try to find that clip and attach it. But that conversation got super hot, super heated, and you should really take a look at it because of the statements made by Mr. Hulk regarding black people and our quote-unquote the supposed propensity towards committing criminal acts.
To see this ruling 6-2, they clearly say that the bottom line is there's no way in the world Dwayne Buck's own attorney should have introduced any evidence that said that solely because he is black, he somehow is a threat to society.
Yeah, that is absolutely right. You know, LDF has been litigating this case for the last 6 years, you know, arguing that principle and that point. You know, there is no way in the world any competent criminal defense attorney can or should introduce evidence that says their own client is more likely to be dangerous because of their race. And especially not in Texas, where the law said that the finding of future dangerousness was a prerequisite for a death sentence. So basically, it was just literally the factor. He presented evidence on the very factor that would condemn his own client to death, and he did it based on race. It's astonishing, and it really is insane.
First of all, who in the heck is this attorney?
You know, this is an attorney who has a long record of not very good advocacy on behalf of his death capitally charged clients. You know, there was a New York Times.
Is the attorney a public defender? The attorney a public defender?
He was an appointed private lawyer, who was appointed by the courts repeatedly in Harris County to represent people facing the death penalty. But the New York Times did an article on him several years ago, finding that he had more people on death row than many states had on death row. So that should give you some sense of how poor this lawyer was at representing his clients.
What was this lawyer somehow just taking a plethora of cases and just thinking, look, they're guilty, let's take it and move on?
I can't really explain, what he did here, because I don't really think there is an explanation for what he did here. I will say this, that this is not a situation where he was surprised by the evidence that was presented by the expert. The expert provided a pretrial report to counsel saying in the report in black and white that he believed that race was a factor that made Mr. Buck more likely to be dangerous. So even before the start of trial, counsel knew what this expert's opinion was, and he did nothing to deal with that. And he could have done a lot of things. He could have obviously found a new expert, but even if, let's say, he was really wedded to this expert, he could have told the expert that was unconstitutional evidence and it had to come out. Right. He could have done anything, but he did nothing. And instead of trying
All right, let me stop there. The expert is psychologist Dr. Walter Quijano. That's Quijno. And he has testified numerous times, which is going to be pointed out. He has testified numerous times against people of color, and specifically black people, about their propensity towards violence and murder.
His client, he just put this guy on the stand and said, so tell me why tell me what your report says. And so, look, the expert said he's more dangerous because he's black.
Let's deal with the Supreme Court decision. It was a 6-2 ruling. Look, that is a significant ruling. I don't know of anybody who is shocked that Clarence Thomas would rule the way he did and send him to Alito. And it is as if their deal is, look, the guy did it. It doesn't care what the witness said. It's all good. I mean, that rationale, that's simply morally offensive.
This case, obviously I agree, right? I argued the case in the Supreme Court. I will say this. I will say Justice Alito, during the argument, I was a little bit surprised to see him in dissent, because he really did seem to be really offended, both in this argument and they had a prior decision on the case. Both times he seemed pretty offended by the introduction of this evidence. And in the oral argument in October, he actually called the presentation of this evidence indefensible. I can't say what happened between then and now, but he is not one of the, I'm not super surprised, generally based on his record in capital cases, but I had hoped we would get his vote in at the end here, but we did not. Clarence Thomas, I can't explain by any stretch of the imagination. So, this is a case that, like I said, it has surprised me that we have had to fight for it, for 6 years, right? This is not a situation where the evidence was subject to interpretation. This is not implicit bias. This is the old stuff. This is saying straight out loud that, you know, somebody's race makes them more dangerous and therefore should be, you know, executed. This is first generation racial discrimination. So, you know, the fact that anyone's affected is terrible.
I want to pull in Jolanda Jones right now. Jolanda, look, a lot of folks don't realize Harris County has been responsible for sending more people to death row than a whole number of other states. And this is one of those things that, again, for a lot of people, when you talk about trying cases, to have this sort of attorney essentially doom his own client, it also speaks to the kind of practices that used to exist there when it came to the DA's office there in Harris County.
Well, the judges appoint counsel. It's supposed to come up on a wheel, and it's supposed to be random, and they appoint you depending on your level of certification. I suspect I know who the lawyer is, but I'm not going to call his name. But I mean, a lot of people said that lawyer actually would come to court drunk. So, you know, the expert regularly testified on behalf of the state to put people to death. So I don't know why any competent defense lawyer would call an expert who on the regular testifies for the state. And
exactly. So pretty much they knew that once they called, number one, this particular psychologist, they had an idea of which way he was going to roll as far as his report was concerned, and then he gave the defense a written report stating exactly what he was going to do, and the defense attorney, who was supposed to be advocating for his client, trying to save his life, puts the guy up there anyway to repeat what he had given to them in written form. Come on. The fix was in against this guy. I mean, I do not know all the details of the case as far as this guy killing the people that he did, but I damn sure can see, you know, that this guy absolutely got an ineffective defense in the pursuit of saving his life.
yes, future dangerousness is a requirement in order to put someone to sleep, to kill them.
Okay, and absolutely, if future dangerousness is one of the requirements in order to put someone to death, why the hell would the defense put that witness up there to do the prosecution's job for them?
So, and even when it came up, he should have objected, and he didn't do that. I mean, that's law school 101. So he must have slept through constitutional law or was drunk through constitutional law. I don't understand it. And it does not surprise me that Clarence Thomas voted like he voted, because he always votes like that. And to say that the crime was heinous, most capital murders are heinous. That's why they're capital. So, I mean, there's no good way to kill somebody. So I don't understand that logic, but I am thankful that the Supremes came back like they did and said in black and white that you absolutely cannot give someone death or consider race in determining someone's future dangerousness.
Well, John, I think it's important that people understand that that when you talk about these cases, I mean, this is obviously clear cut, but when you had the case out of Louisiana where they were striking African Americans. No, John, I'm still there. Can you hear me? Jolanda, can you hear me?
I can hear you now, yes. I lost you.
Okay, so again, we're good. We're good. I don't think a lot of people don't understand that when you talk about these cases. Look, most people don't realize all of these things that happen during a trial, and frankly, attorneys have to get lucky on appeal. And what's unfortunate, you have these judges who say, "Well, that might be bad, but." For the most part, everything else was good, so therefore it was all straight. I mean, this was 6 years. I don't understand how any basic appeals judge could not see that this should not have been allowed at a trial.
Okay, have you forgotten where this case was? This is in Harris County, Texas, Houston, Texas, where we send people to death row on the regular. The state of Texas sends more people to death row than anywhere. We have more people in prison in Texas on death row than some countries have. So it's not unusual here. It happens all the time. And now, relatively, they now have standards in order to appoint you to a capital case. But before that, they didn't even have it. They just, it came up. And I don't actually believe it's per se capital murders. So I think a lot of the judges here just wanted to get this in the little system and send him off to TDC and kill him. So
I want to go back to Christina real quick here. And Christina, then Texas Attorney General John Cornyn, now a U.S. Senator, they went back and researched this particular psychologist, and this psychologist testified in other cases, and they discovered at least multiple cases where this psychologist, last name was Keanu, I'm going to find the first name in just a second, gave what is Walter Keanu, gave what is described as blatantly racist testimony.
Yeah, that's one of the really, this case is remarkable in so many ways, not just the fact that somebody would present this explicit testimony once, but in fact that this expert, as counsel just noted, had a cottage industry of testifying in capital cases for a while there in Texas, and testified in numerous other cases of folks that were sent, Black and Latino folks that were sent to death row. And what happened was one of the other cases went to the Supreme Court while John Cornyn was the Attorney General. And ultimately, to his credit, to then Attorney General Cornyn's credit, he conceded that the introduction of race or ethnicity as evidence of future dangerousness was unconstitutional. And not only did he admit it in the Supreme Court, he then came back to Texas and said, you know what, I'm not letting anyone get executed on my watch based on this evidence. And so he had his office search through death row and figure out who had this evidence presented against them. They found 6 additional cases, including Mr. Bucks, and they said, we will not allow any of these 6 prisoners to be executed on the basis of this testimony, the basis of these capital convictions and death sentences. Texas kept its promise. I just want to wrap it up. They kept their promise in 5 of those cases, and then they just completely reversed course without explanation in Mr. Buck's case and have aggressively sought his execution for no reason that they can explain.
And again, that was a case last year of Foster versus Chapman that dealt with the issue of racial bias when it came to a case out of Georgia. That was a 7-to-1 vote, a 7-to-1 vote, and no shock that Clarence Thomas was that one vote. It is stunning that other Supreme Court justices could see racial bias when it comes to these cases, but the only African American on the Supreme Court, for some reason, does not. Christina, we appreciate it. Joanna Jones, we appreciate it as well. Thank you so very much.
All right, so again, Justice Clarence Thomas is a piece of shit, okay, that doesn't deserve the air that he breathes. I'm sorry that he had a quote-unquote bad experience when he was, I guess, 21 or 22, attempting to get jobs at various law offices, and they made I guess, judgment that because he went to Harvard, that he was an affirmative action case. And ever since that point, he has had a hard-on for, I guess, number one, his Harvard degree, and number two, being black, because he has done everything pretty much under the sun to push back against black people. Now, I don't give a damn about, who loves who and who marries who, whatever. But this guy had married a white woman, okay? And there are a lot of great white women out there. No overall issue with them. Matter of fact, they, I consider some of them great. But this particular one that I'm talking about is also, I would say, a racist. Now, how she marries a black man, I guess he convinced her that he was on her side. But she is a major contributor to the Tea Party, both in its formation and its support. And as late as 2014 was pushing the Tea Party to try to find some way to impeach and prosecute President Obama for what she was hoping would be giving aid and comfort to the enemy, i.e. ISIS. This woman is out of fucking control, and it's no wonder to me that her husband shares her same philosophies based on his various rulings. Now, I said all that to say this. Everybody that's black ain't black. Everybody that's white ain't white. Okay, but everybody that you would hope would at least give you the benefit of the doubt may, I'm not even going to say may, probably won't. There are some people out there that are predisposed to certain rulings when you arrive at their courts. Now, Texas, you don't want to go to court in Texas because unless you got a great attorney, because you damn sure, unless you were absolutely innocent with video evidence and everything else, and again, that's depending on the crime, they are going to put the heat on you. There is, in my opinion, not a great love for the finding of justice, okay? Prosecutors' jobs are supposed to be in search of justice, not in search of a conviction, but in search of justice. Down here in Texas, it's the other way around. They want to get a win, and they will take a win any which way they can. Now, I will give kudos to John Cornyn. When this came past him, he has a heart and he has a soul, and he basically, as was indicated, said that this was wrong, and he wasn't going to let situations like this where it causes the death of a person. I'm not even going to say a black person, but the death of a person, though you know that the cases he found, they were all black. He was not going to let that transpire on his watch. Now, why they have such a hard-on for Dwayne Buck, and that's that bullshit attorney general that we currently have. That guy's name is Ken Paxton. I did a video on him. He is an absolute jerk, as was his predecessor, who is currently governor of the state, Abbott. They were both total assholes and remain that way. But yeah, I'm rambling at this point. Let me continue with the panel. Now, there are going to be, as you will see, 2 black Republicans and I guess 1 black Democrat that are going to make their comments on this. It's amazing to me, especially the one gentleman that I will let you figure out who I'm talking about. This guy should not be on TV. I'm just, Roland Martin has this guy on quite a bit. He used to be on CNN. He got his butt kicked by Don Lemon, so I guess he's run back to be a guest for TV One. But anyway, check out the commentary subsequent to the information that you just saw.
I want to quickly go to our panel there. It is stunning, Ralph, when you look at these cases and you see racial bias, and then people get ticked off at Black Lives Matter, get ticked off at the NAACP and others. This is why we have civil rights organizations saying that we should have racial bias that is completely eradicated out of our legal system, and these 2 cases show that even in 2017 it still exists.
Well, first let me say that I am morally and philosophically opposed to the death penalty, period, across the board. So I just wanted to put that on the record. But when you look at this case, you're right. When someone makes a blatant statement that says someone is more prone to be violent because they are, black, white, Hispanic, whatever, that is a problem. And those sorts of statements should never have been entered into the record of the case. And I have no idea what his defense attorney was thinking when he allowed this gentleman to take the stand, make that statement, and not object on the spot.
I'll tell you what he was thinking. He was thinking that we gonna kill this nigger, period. And I don't use that word lightly. I hate that word. But that's what that guy was thinking when he put that psychologist up there to make the statements that he did. And as indicated, this wasn't the first time that he's used that guy, and other quote unquote defense attorneys have used that guy.
There's no way to defend that.
Amber, again, I talked about this case, 6-2 ruling of the Supreme Court. Clarence Thomas is in that too. I brought up the case last year, a clear case of racial bias, 7-1. Even Samuel Alito ruled for the plaintiff there. Clarence Thomas was that one. I mean, this is one of the examples why black folks don't roll with Justice Clarence Thomas, because even when you have racial bias in the legal system, he somehow ignores it. And is blind to it.
I mean, we've never expected much from Clarence Thomas since he was appointed to his position, and how he treated folks like Anita Hill. He does not represent the needs of black folks in this country, right? And I think folks like Marissa Alexander in her book, The New Jim Crow, has continuously laid out how our criminal justice system is implicitly biased along the lines of race, whether it's explicit or implicit. And I'm glad we're having this conversation. I also want to add a little nuance to this conversation, that we're also talking about the lives of black women who have been killed. And this case is particularly complicated as well as heart-wrenching. No, there should not be discrimination in our criminal justice process, but yes, we need more people to stand up for black women, especially those who are dying at the hands of their partners.
And look, again here, parents, at the end of the day, this case was not about the innocence of Dwayne Buck. It was simply, if you're going to sentence to someone death, do so without racial bias being a part of the decision.
Sure, and I think that's the problem with this entire case. Unlike my colleague, buddy here, Ralph, I fully support the death penalty, and I think that it should be applied in this case specifically. But I think as it relates to the rationale as to why this person should be put to death, I think if the introduction of race was wrong, the defense attorney should have never allowed that testimony to take place, and the courts should never allow that to have been admissible. But at the end of the day, in my opinion, that's the travesty of justice, that for whatever reason the attorney and the judicial system in Harris County decided to go after this case for the death penalty based upon race, rather than looking at the facts that this man committed some atrocities. And I would just encourage the audience to read Justice Thomas's book, My Grandfather's Son, to get a better idea and sense of who he is and what his judicial and moral philosophy is.
See, now, he was okay until he got to that point. And this dumbass motherfucker, Paris Denard, is sitting up here trying to defend Justice Clarence Thomas when you can't, okay? You can't. Now, I read the goddamn book, okay? I read the book. And the book does not give him a defense for his actions, okay? Things happen to people every day. And if we took everything that happened to us to heart and went as far to the left or as far to the right as events in our lives may or could push us, we'd all be raving fucking racist maniacs, okay, one way or the other, because everybody has experienced something negative pretty much from other races. So if that is in fact what this Joe Jerkoff is trying to defend, he needs to kiss everybody's ass. Now Roland's going to check him on that, because that book and his history should have nothing to do with the decision in this particular case.
Who Clarence Thomas was when he assaulted Anita Hill, who he is.
One second. No, what I would ask people to do is to actually read this ruling to see his dissenting opinion, to understand how it drastically differs from the other folks on the Supreme Court. This is not about his character and how he grew up, his judicial philosophy. This is about this case, and I gave 2 examples of clear racial bias. In one case, 7 other justices saw it. The only black man on the court didn't see it. In this case, 6 Nick saw it and he somehow still didn't see it. No, read the ruling. You don't have to read his book. Hold tight, folks, when we come back.
All right, so he basically checked him because this guy will defend anything Republican and anything black Republican, and even Ralph, okay, who is not a Roland Martin fan, to be sure. He basically came out and stated the facts the way that they were. This guy should not be on TV anywhere. Anytime he comes on, he always takes this ultra conservative viewpoint that flies in the face of plain and simple facts, such as those facts that were given in this particular case for this guy to get a new penalty phase trial. Damn shame. Some of our people, there's nothing that you can do for guys like this other than not to give them any kind of a platform to spew bullshit.